On a distant planet named Illyria, far away from Earth, lived a gentle and strong alien woman named Lyra. She was known for her calm spirit and kindness. Her heart was forever scarred by the loss of her young daughter, Nari, many years ago. Nari had been taken by ruthless raiders who attacked their peaceful village. Lyra searched for her daughter for years, but all her efforts were in vain. The raiders had vanished without a trace, leaving no hope behind. The planet of Illyria had become a place of quiet sorrow for her. Lyra continued to live in her small home, always looking at the stars, hoping that one day, somehow Nari would return. She raised her son Kavi with love, but the emptiness of Nari's absence never went away.
Lyra often found herself talking to the stars,
Asking them where her daughter was, praying that one day she would return. Then one day, everything changed. A strange ship appeared in the sky, moving slowly toward Illyria. It was not like any ship Lyra had seen before. The craft was sleek and silver, and it glowed faintly as it descended. Lyra's heart raced. She had seen ships land on Illyria before, but none had looked like this. Curiosity mixed with fear, and she quickly made her way to the open field where the ship was landing. As the ship's hatch opened, a tall human soldier stepped out. His uniform was unlike anything she had ever seen, and his expression was serious yet calm. Lyra didn't know much about humans, but she had heard of them. She had heard they were strong, brave, and known for their warrior spirit. But what caught her attention the most was the small figure in the soldier's arms. It was her daughter. For a moment, Lyra couldn't breathe. Her heart stopped, and she couldn't believe her eyes. The soldier gently placed Nari on the ground. The girl looked older, her face changed, but there was no doubt this was her daughter. Lyra's legs almost gave way beneath her, but she rushed forward, calling her name. Nari. Lyra cried out, her voice breaking as she ran towards her. Her heart pounded in her chest as she reached for the girl. Nari turned and looked at her mother with wide eyes, but something in her expression was distant. It was as though the years had put an ocean between them. Lyra's hands trembled as she reached out to touch Nari's face, tears welling up in her eyes. "My daughter, you're back. After all these years, I've found you." Her voice was full of disbelief and hope. But Nari only stared at her, confusion filling her eyes. Who are you?" Nari asked softly, her voice almost a whisper. It was clear she didn't remember her mother. She hadn't recognized her. The pain of those words struck Lyra deep in her heart. It was as if her daughter was a stranger. The child she had held, loved, and protected was gone. The soldier who had stayed quiet until then stepped forward. "She doesn't remember you, ma'am. She was very young when she was taken, and she's been raised by the raiders." Lyra turned to him, her heart heavy with pain. "What happened to her? Where have they taken her all these years?" The soldier nodded grimly. "The raiders took her as a hostage, but over the years they raised her. She grew up in their camp, learned their ways. She wasn't treated kindly, but she survived. We found her when we were tracking the raiders. Nari helped us escape a trap they set. She's strong and she's clever." Lyra looked at Nari again, seeing the young woman standing before her. She looked so different. The softness of her childhood was gone, replaced with a hardened look, one of survival. She wasn't the little girl Lyra had held in her arms, so long ago. Nari glanced at the soldier, then back at her mother. "I don't know you," she said, her voice distant. "I don't remember you." Lyra's heart broke all over again. The years had stolen her daughter's memories, her connection to home. Lyra felt like a stranger to the girl she had once loved so dearly. "I'm your mother," Lyra whispered, her voice full of emotion. "I'm Lyra, your mother. I've been searching for you for so long, Nari. I never stopped hoping you'd come back." But Nari only took a step back. "I don't remember you. I don't remember anything before the raiders," she sounded. Confused, torn between the girl she had once been and the young woman she had become. The soldier spoke again, his tone gentle. "She's been through a lot. I can't imagine how hard this must be for both of you." Lyra nodded, trying to hold back the tears. She knew that Nari needed time, that it would take more than just a moment to rebuild what had been lost. but the pain of it was still too much. For all these years, Lyra had imagined this moment, dreamed of it, but nothing could prepare her for the reality of a daughter who didn't remember her, who didn't recognize the love they had shared. "I'll help you," the soldier said, noticing Lyra's pain. "We'll give her time. She's been through things none of us can understand, but she's here now, and that's all that matters." Lyra looked at Nari, still unsure of how to bridge the gap between them. She longed to hold her daughter again, but she knew the distance was too great for now. She had to be patient, even though every part of her wanted to rush in and reclaim the bond they had once shared. "We'll start fresh," Lyra said softly, more to herself than anyone else. "We'll start over, die." As Nari looked up at her, her eyes full of confusion, Lyra promised herself that she would never give up. No matter how long it took, no matter how hard it was, she would find a way to bring her daughter back home, even if it meant teaching her to love her mother all over again. After the initial shock of seeing Nari again, Lyra had taken her daughter back to the small cottage where she had lived all these years. It wasn't much, but it had been a home for Lyra and her son Kavi. The walls were simple, adorned with handmade crafts and drawings from when Nari was young. The room felt colder now, though. Lyra didn't know how to bridge the gap between the daughter she had lost and the young woman who had returned in her place. Nari sat on a chair by the window, her gaze distant, lost in thought. She seemed out of place in this quiet home, as if she didn't know how to belong here anymore. Lyra sat at the table, nervously twisting her fingers, unsure of how to help her daughter. She hadn't wanted to press Nari too hard, but the silence between them was unbearable. The soldier, Max, had been silent for most of the journey, standing in the corner of the room, watching both of them. He had come with them from the human ship. His presence had offered some comfort to Lyra, but she could see that he too was troubled. He had explained earlier that he would be staying for a while to help, but Lyra didn't know how much longer he would remain. She wasn't sure how to feel about that either, breaking the silence. Max finally spoke, his voice calm but full of seriousness. "She's been through a lot. She's not the same little girl you remember, Lyra. The raiders, they didn't just take her. They raised her, turned her into something else." Lyra turned toward him, her heart sinking. She had suspected as much. Nari had been gone for so many years, and the last thing Lyra had imagined was that her daughter would return, unchanged. But hearing it from Max made the reality more painful. Max continued. "Sitting down across from Lyra, we found Nari in a place that none of us wanted to see. She wasn't the victim we thought she would be. She was strong. She fought back. Raiders taught her how to survive. She helped us escape a trap they set for us." Lyra's heart ached. She could hear the admiration in Max's voice, but it didn't ease the sadness she felt. Her daughter had been raised by people who had no love for her, only a need to use her. The thought of it twisted her stomach. "I don't understand," Lyra said softly. "How could she have become like them? She was just a little girl." Max's face softened. "I don't think she had much choice. When we found her, she was a survivor. She'd learned how to keep herself alive in a world that didn't care about her. She had to be tough." "Did she want to be tough?" Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "Did she want to forget who she was? Forget that she was once loved? Forget me?" Max hesitated, then nodded. "The raiders made sure she did. They had a way of breaking people down, but she kept a part of herself. She didn't forget you completely. She just ... She became someone else. Someone who could protect herself in a cruel world." Lyra felt a wave of grief wash over her. She wanted to believe Max, but the pain of seeing her daughter so changed and so distant was unbearable. How could Nari ever remember the love they had shared? How could they ever be the same again? At that moment, Nari stood up, interrupting the conversation. She had been silent for a long time, watching the exchange between her mother and the soldier. She turned toward them, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "Why are you still here?" Nari's voice was cold, distant. "I don't belong here. I don't belong anywhere." Lyra stood quickly, her heart aching at the sound of her daughter's voice. "Nari, please don't say that. You do belong here. This is your home, Nari." shook her head. This was home when I was a child, but that was before everything changed. Before I became something else, I'm not the girl you remember. I'm not even sure who I am anymore. Lyra stepped forward, her voice soft and filled with emotion. You're my daughter. You've always been my daughter, Nari. You may have been away for a long time, but that doesn't change who you are. You don't have to be who they made you. You can be who you were meant to be. Nari's eyes filled with tears. I wish I could believe that, she said quietly. I've seen too much. I've done things I can't forget. Max watched the exchange with quiet understanding. He knew that this wasn't an easy journey for either of them, rebuilding. A bond that had been broken by years of pain and loss was never going to be simple. But he also saw the way Lyra looked at Nerith. There was love there, deep and unwavering, and he knew that love was stronger than anything Nari had faced before. Give her time, Max said gently. She needs time to process all of this. She's been through more than any of us can imagine. Lyra nodded, wiping away a tear. She had to be patient. She had waited years to find Nari, and now she would wait for her daughter to remember the love they once shared. Even if it took time, even if it took longer than she ever hoped, she would never give up on Nari. Nari turned away, her back facing her mother and the soldier. She was torn, caught between the memories of a painful past and the possibility of a new future. She felt lost, like a stranger in her own life. She had to find a way to move forward, but she didn't know how. Lyra stood quietly, watching her daughter, not knowing what to say. She only knew one thing, no matter what. She would always be there for Nari, and she would never stop trying to bring her daughter back home. The days passed slowly for Lyra and Nari. They lived together in the same house, but the space between them felt vast, like a wall no one could break down. Lyra spent her days trying to reconnect with her daughter, but every attempt seemed to fall short. Nari, though physically present, seemed distant, lost in her own thoughts. She wandered through the house. It was clear she didn't feel like she belonged there. Lyra tried to be patient, but it was hard. She had missed so much of Nari's life, and she wanted to make up for all the lost years. She wanted to see the little girl she had raised, the one who used to laugh and play in their garden. But Nari was no longer that child. She had been changed by her years with the Raiders. She had become someone else. One afternoon, Lyra found Nari sitting by the window again, staring out at the distant hills. The sunlight cast long shadows across the land, but Nari didn't seem to notice. She was lost in thought, her eyes distant, like she was looking at something far away, something from her past. Lyra hesitated, unsure of what to say. She had tried to approach Nari several times, but the girl always pulled away. This time she decided to sit beside her, hoping that maybe just being there might help. I remember when you used to love the sunset, Lyra said softly, breaking the silence. Nari turned her head, her eyes meeting her mother's. There was a sadness in them, a quiet sorrow that Lyra couldn't fully understand. Nari said nothing at first, but then she spoke in a voice that sounded as though she had been holding back for a long time. I used to be a different person, didn't I? Nari asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lyra's heart ached at the question. You're still my daughter, Nari. You've always been my daughter. Nothing can change that. Nari shook her head slowly. I'm not sure anymore. The girl who used to love sunsets, the girl who played in the garden with you, she's gone. I don't know who I am anymore. Lyra reached out, gently touching Nari's hand. You're still you, Nari. You're still the girl I raised, the girl I loved. You may have been lost for a while, but I've never stopped loving you. Nari looked down at her mother's hand, her expression torn. But I'm not the same. I've seen things, done things that I can't forget. I'm not the same girl you remember. I've changed. Lyra's voice was soft but steady. We all change, Nari. Life changes us. But it doesn't change who we really are, deep down. I know the years with the Raiders were hard for you, but that's not all of who you are. You're kind, strong, and brave. And those things don't go away. Nari pulled her hand away gently, her face filled with doubt. How can you still see me that way? I've lost so much. You don't even know who I am anymore. Lyra felt a pang of helplessness. She wanted to reach out to Nari, to make her see. that the bond between them was still there, but it was hard. Nari had been shaped by so much pain, so much fear, and Lyra wasn't sure how to help her daughter through it. "I know it's hard," Lyra said softly, "but you don't have to. Go through this alone. I'm here for you, Nari. We can find a way to heal together." But Nari stood up, her expression hardening. "You don't understand. You can't understand. You didn't live through what I did. You didn't see the things I had to do just to survive." Lyra stood too, feeling the distance between them grow. "I don't need to understand everything, Nari. I just need you to know that I love you. I will always love you, no matter what." Nari's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away, turning her back on her mother. "Don't know how to be that girl again," she whispered, more to herself than to Lyra. "I don't know how to go back." Lyra's heart broke. She wanted to reach out and pull her daughter close, to tell her that it was okay to not have all the answers, that they would take things one step at a time. But Nari wasn't ready. She needed space. She needed time. As Nari walked away, Lyra stood in the quiet room, her heart heavy with the weight of the silence that followed. She knew that her daughter was still inside, still the girl she had once been, but the walls built by the years of pain were too strong to break down all at once. Later that day, Max returned to check on them. He had been quiet since his arrival, always watching from a distance, but he had a way of knowing when to step in. "Is she okay?" Max asked, his voice gentle. Lyra nodded slowly, though the sadness in her eyes was hard to hide. "She doesn't remember how to be the girl I raised. She's lost, and I don't know how to help her." Max stood beside her, his expression sympathetic. "It's going to take time, Lyra. She's been through more than any of us can understand. But you're right, she's still in there. She just needs time to heal." Lyra wiped away a tear, grateful for Max's understanding. "I don't want to lose her again. I don't want her to think she's alone." Max placed a hand on her shoulder. "You won't lose her. You're her mother, and no matter what, she'll always need you." Lyra nodded, though doubt still lingered in her heart. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she would never give up. She would wait for Nari, and she would show her that there was still love, still hope, and still a chance for them to heal together. The days that followed were filled with quiet uncertainty. Nari had begun to spend more time outside, wandering the land she had once known as home. She didn't speak much, but there were moments when Lyra would catch her looking at the hills, or the sky with a sense of longing. It was as if Nari was trying to find something she couldn't quite grasp. Lyra knew her daughter was struggling to understand where she belonged, but she also knew that the only way forward was to give Nari the space she needed. One evening, Lyra was standing by the window, watching the stars, when a sharp sound broke. The silence. A low rumble echoed through the ground, followed by a loud crash. Lyra's heart raced. She didn't need to guess what it was. The raiders had returned. She rushed outside, her heart pounding. Nari was standing near the edge of the field, her body tense as she scanned the horizon. The once peaceful landscape was now shadowed by the dark silhouette of a large ship descending from the sky. The raiders had come back, and this time, they were not leaving without a fight. Nari turned to her mother, her face hard with fear. "They're here. They've come for me again." Lyra reached out to her daughter, her voice urgent. "We need to get inside. They'll come after you. Please, Nari. We need to stay safe." But Nari didn't move. "They always come back," she said quietly, her voice filled with both fear and anger. "They think I belong to them, but I don't." Max, who had been watching the horizon as well, stepped forward. His face was grim, but his eyes were filled with determination. "We won't let them take you again, Nari," he said. "We'll fight them. You don't have to face this alone." For a moment, Nari seemed to hesitate. She had been raised to fight, to survive. She had learned to trust no one except herself. But the words from Max and her mother slowly began to sink in. She didn't have to fight alone. Maybe it was time to face her past and confront the fear that had held her back for so long. "I don't want to go back to them," Nari whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't want to be the person they made me." Lyra stepped forward, taking Nari's hand. In hers, "You don't have to be. You are still my daughter, Nari. You don't have to carry their scars anymore. We'll fight together." Max nodded. "We'll protect you. This time, we won't let them win." The sound of engines grew louder, and Lyra knew they didn't have much time. She led Nari inside, and they began to prepare. Max went to the shed to gather weapons, while Lyra checked the house for anything they might need. The quiet home that had once been a place of safety now felt like a battleground. Nari stood near the window, her hand resting on the glass. She looked out at the ship that was now landing, the raiders' forces spilling out onto the land. They were coming, and there was no hiding from them this time. "I don't want to fight," Nari said softly. "I don't know if I can." Lyra walked over to her daughter, her heart full of understanding. "You don't have to be the warrior. They made you. You just have to fight for what's right, for your home, for your future." Nari looked at her mother, her eyes full of uncertainty. She had been trained to fight, to survive, but the woman standing before her was not a warrior. She was her mother, the one person who had always loved her, even when she was lost. It was her mother's love that had never given up, that had never stopped searching for her. Nari took a deep breath and nodded. "I'll fight," she said quietly. "For you, for us." Just then, Max returned, carrying a weapon in each hand. He handed one to Nari and the other to Lyra. "It's time," he said. The three of them stood together, looking out at the approaching raiders. Max was the first to move, his voice calm and steady. "Stay close to me," he instructed. "We'll hold them off until we can get you to safety." Nari gripped her weapon tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. For so long, she had felt like a pawn in someone else's game. But now, for the first time in years, she felt a spark of hope. She wasn't alone anymore. She had her mother and Max. Together, they would face whatever came. The raiders reached the edge of the field, their footsteps loud and menacing. Their leader, a tall alien with a scar across his face, stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Nari. "You're coming with us," he said coldly. Nari stepped forward, standing tall beside Max and her mother. She no longer felt like the frightened girl who had been taken years ago. She had fought to survive, and now she was ready to fight for herself, for her home. "No," Nari said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere with you." The raider leader smirked, stepping closer. "You have no choice." Lyra stood by her daughter, her voice unwavering. "She has every choice. She's free now." Max raised his weapon, his eyes locked on the raiders. "This ends now." The battle began. The raiders charged, but they weren't prepared for the resistance they faced. Lyra fought with a strength she didn't know she had, protecting her daughter at all costs. Nari, no longer the frightened child, fought alongside her, her movements sharp and precise. Max was a force to be reckoned with, his training and experience showing as he led the charge. In the chaos of the battle, Nari realized something. She was no longer the person the raiders had made her. She was who she had always been, a daughter, a fighter, and someone who had the power to choose her own path. Together, they fought back, stronger than ever. And this time the raiders would not win. The battle was over. The raiders had been defeated, their ships now scattered across the landscape, smoking and torn apart. The air was thick with the smell of burning metal and the quiet hum of distant explosions. Lyra, Nari, and Max stood together, surveying the wreckage. The sky was dimming, and the last rays of the setting sun cast a soft glow over the field. There was a strange sense of calm, as if the world had paused for just a moment. Nari's body ached from the fight, but her heart felt lighter than it had in years. She had fought, and she had won. But as she looked at the fallen raiders, she realized that the battle wasn't over. There was still something she needed to face, something deeper than the fight on the surface. Lyra noticed the change in her daughter's expression. "Nari," she asked gently, her voice full of concern. "What's wrong?" Nari looked at the wreckage, her eyes distant. "I don't feel like I thought I would," she said softly. "I thought defeating them would fix everything, but it doesn't. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what to do next." Lyra stepped forward, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Nari, you've done something incredible today. You stood up for yourself, for the life you want, and that's all you can do. But the rest will come in time." Max, who had been checking the area for any remaining threats, turned to them. His face was still serious, but there was a small, encouraging smile on his lips. Your fight wasn't just against them. It was against the part of you that they shaped. You've already made the hardest choice. Nari met his gaze. And the first time, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years: hope. She had chosen to fight for herself. She had chosen to be free. But that didn't make the path forward any clearer. There was still so much she didn't know about herself, so much she had to heal from. Max is right, Lyra continued, her voice steady. The fight was never just about them. It was about you finding your way back to yourself. You don't have to figure it all out today. Nari felt the weight of her mother's words settle on her shoulders. She had spent so long being lost, following the will of the raiders, doing whatever it took to survive. She hadn't known who she was outside of that. But now, she was beginning to see that she had the power to decide who she would become. Don't want to be their weapon anymore, Nari said, her voice firm. I want to be more than that. I want to choose my own future. Lyra smiled, a proud and knowing smile. You already are. Nari stood still for a moment, letting her mother's words sink in. Shh. She looked at the battlefield once more, a place where she had fought and won, but also the place where she had confronted her deepest fears. She realized now that the hardest part wasn't the battle itself. The hardest part was deciding to walk away from the life the raiders had forced on her. I don't want to run anymore, Nari said quietly. I don't want to hide from who. I want to be with you, Mom. I want to build something here, something new. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but her smile was wide. We will, Nari. Together, we will build a life that's ours. Max, standing off to the side, gave them both a nod. We're not alone anymore, Nari, and you don't have to carry the weight of the past. It's time to move forward.
Nari
nodded, feeling a sense of peace wash over her for the first time in years. The path ahead was still uncertain, but it was her path now. She was free to choose what came next. As they turned to walk back toward the house, the quiet hum of life slowly returned to the land. The fields, once scarred by the raiders' presence, now felt like a place of possibility. The air seemed clearer, the sky more open, and the stars, which had once been a source of longing, now seemed to shine with promise. Back at the cottage, Lyra prepared a simple meal. The smell of cooked food filled the air, and the warmth of the fire brought a sense of comfort. Nari, sitting at the table, looked out the window at the darkening sky. She could hear the wind rustling outside, but for the first time in a long while, it wasn't the wind of danger. It was the wind of a new beginning. Mom? Nari said suddenly, her voice filled with curiosity. What was it like before? Lyra paused for a moment, the question catching her off guard. Before the raiders? She asked, sitting down. Across from her daughter, Nari nodded. Before all of this happened, what was it like when we were a family? Lyra smiled softly, her eyes distant as she remembered. It was peaceful. We lived in a small village, close to nature. You and you. Cavi would run through the fields, play by the river, and we'd spend evenings watching the stars together. There was a lot of love. We were happy. Nari listened closely, her heart aching with the memories Lyra shared. It was hard to imagine those peaceful days. The life she had known had been stolen from her, and she had spent so many years fighting, just to survive. But now, with her mother sitting across from her, sharing stories of the past, Nari realized that maybe she could build a future that was just as peaceful. Maybe she could create new memories, ones that weren't filled with pain and loss. Maybe we can have that again, Nari said quietly, a small, hopeful smile on her lips. Lyra's heart swelled with love as she looked at her daughter. Will, Nari? We will. And in that moment, Nari knew that no matter what happened next, she wasn't alone. She had her mother. And together, they would create a future filled with love, hope, and the chance for something better. The days after the battle passed slowly, but there was a feeling of peace in the air that hadn't been there before. The land, which had once been marred by the raiders' presence, now felt like it was healing. Nari had found something new. Within herself, a sense of belonging that she hadn't known in years. She wasn't the girl who had been taken by the raiders anymore. She was becoming the person she wanted to be, and for the first time, she felt like she was truly home. Lyra watched her daughter carefully. Nari had been quiet for a while, but the silence wasn't filled with sadness or fear. It was a peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that comes after finding a new path. Nari spent her days helping her mother with the house and the land, learning things she had never learned when she was with the raiders. There was a new light in her eyes, a hope that had been buried for so long. One morning, as Nari was working in the garden, Lyra walked outside and stood in the doorway, watching her. Daughter. Nari was kneeling by the flowers, her hands covered in dirt as she carefully tended to them. She looked so different from the girl Lyra had last seen, so full of life and purpose. Lyra smiled to herself, feeling a quiet pride. Nari looked up and saw her mother standing in the doorway. For a moment she hesitated, unsure of how to begin. She had always felt like she didn't belong here, like she was a stranger to herself. But today, she felt something different. She felt like she was part of something real. Mom, Nari called, her voice soft. Can I talk too? Lyra stepped outside, walking toward her daughter. Of course, Nari. What's on your mind? Nari stood up, brushing the dirt off her hands. I've been thinking a lot about ... everything. About the past, about the raiders, and about where I go from here. You don't have to have all the answers, Nari. You've been through so much. The most important thing is that you're here now. You don't need to carry the weight of the past anymore. Nari looked down at the flowers, her fingers gently touching the petals. I know. I keep thinking about the life I lived. Before, I was always running, always fighting. It's hard to stop, to just be ... here. She paused and looked at her mother. I don't know how to let go of it all. Lyra stepped forward and gently touched Nari's arm. It's okay to feel lost sometimes. The world can be a hard place, and sometimes the things we've been through leave scars. But those scars don't define who we are. What matters now is that you have a chance to rebuild, to create a life that's yours. Nari nodded slowly, but she still looked uncertain. I want to build something new, something better. But I'm scared that I'll never be able to forget the things I did, the things I became. Lyra smiled softly, her voice filled with understanding. You don't have to forget, Nari, but you can forgive yourself. The past is a part of you, but it doesn't have to control you. What matters is what you do now. Every day is a new chance to make a choice. Nari looked at her mother, her heart full of emotions she hadn't been able to express before. You're right. I can choose. I can choose to move forward. I don't have to be who they made me. Lyra's eyes shone with pride. Exactly. You're free now, Nari. You have the power to decide who you are, and no one can take that away from you. Nari took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. For so long, she had been trapped by her past, by the things the raiders had forced her to become. But now, she saw a future ahead of her. A future where she could be herself, where she could be the person she had always wanted to be. I'm ready, Nari said quietly. I'm ready to move forward. Lyra's heart filled with joy, and she pulled Nari into a tight hug. So proud of you, Nari. You've already come so far. Nari hugged her mother back, feeling the warmth of her love surrounding her. It was the first time in years that she truly felt like she belonged. She wasn't just the girl who had been lost, who had been stolen away. She was Nari, the daughter of Lyra, and she was home. Later that day, Lyra and Nari sat together on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, and the peaceful silence of the land wrapped around them. For the first time, Nari felt at peace with herself. She had a family. She had a future. And she knew, deep down, that she could build it from the ground up, just like she had built the garden. As the stars began to appear in the night sky, Nari turned to her mother, a small smile on her lips. I think I'm starting to understand what you meant, she said softly. I don't have to carry the past with me forever. I can choose to let it go. Lyra smiled, her eyes sparkling with love.
Nari.
You can. And I'll be here. every step of the way. For the first time in years, Nari felt free.
Odd.
The weight of her past had started to lift, and a new chapter was beginning. She didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time, she was ready to face it. With her mother by her side, together, they would build a new life, one where the past was a lesson, not a burden. And in that moment, Nari knew that no matter what happened, she would always have a place to call home.